There we go. All right. I'd like to thank everyone for coming. My name is Michael Pyle, and I am the Executive Director of the International Law Students Association. I've been in touch with most of you, and those that I haven't, I've been in touch with someone from your national administration team. I'd like to begin by thanking you all for coming and also introducing Stephanie Corzantes from the ILSA Executive Office, who's logged in as Stephanie Jessup ILSA. There she is. Thank you, Stephanie. We're going to talk today about the new scoring and judges software that we have here at the Jessup Moot Court competition that I'm going to urge you all strongly to use this year for a number of reasons that you'll see. Before we launch into it, I would like, for bandwidth and other purposes, to ask everybody to please turn off your cameras and mute your microphones. We will have, if you have questions, first of all, please feel free to put them in the chat window at any time. I'll be watching that on the side, and if it's something that I can address immediately, I will. And if it is not, then I will address it at the end. And there is always time for questions at the end of this, and so we will. I will field those questions at the end. If you raise your hand, I'll call on you and we'll answer questions. Two other things, as you will see in the software, this new system is fully integrated with ILSA's database. And so you'll get the team names, you'll get members of the team and everything else directly inputted into the software automatically, as well as for those of you who are having ILSA grade your memorials this year, the memorial scores will be integrated automatically, which is great. It also pulls the judges. Give me a moment. It's telling me that I appear to have switched languages for some reason. Sorry about that. It also pulls your judges' information, so their prior conflicts, prior viewings, so on and so forth. And so for the first time this year, I'm going to ask all of you to have your judges registered, just like you've registered at ilsa.org. I'm going to ask your judges to register at ilsa.org, and that way they will be in your database system. One other exciting announcement, we are launching this year a new program called Coffee and Compromis, and that will be a judges-only event where we'll bring together judges from around the world many, many times between January and March to discuss the compromis and to discuss strategies and tips for judging oral rounds of the Jessup competition. And so I will be emailing all of you later this week to get a list of your confirmed judges, because obviously we don't want teams or coaches or students attending those events, but we do want to encourage as many judges as possible. So keep an eye on your email. I'll be sending out an email for a list of people that are invited, and then we'll send out invitations, and they will be free to attend and participate in those events. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the new scoring and judging software. As those of you that have been doing this for a while know, there's a lot of repetition and a lot of drudge work that goes into scoring the Jessup, that goes into setting up the judges panels, setting up the pairings and everything else. And just as importantly, there is a lot of opportunity for mistakes. And so we spend a lot of time double checking, triple checking, so on and so forth. And it sometimes feels like we never get it 100% right. So for the last 20 years or so, we've been using the software that many of you have seen before, but that was still very much manual. Last year at the international rounds, we rolled out a brand new integrated judges and scoring software package that automates a lot of the things that we've been doing up till now. It worked like a dream at the international rounds with 137 teams competing. And so this summer, we worked with the software developers to create a version that can be used at all of the national rounds. So with your kind permission, I'm going to share my screen now. So in January, we will send to you, after most of the memorials are graded, we will send to you the links and the setup for your country's national administrator scoring and judging software. You'll get a login and password and a URL. When you log in the first time, it will look like this, and you will click sign in. Now, I know that many of you are hoping to have your judges administrator, your scoring administrator, and other key administrators join the system. You can do that. You can create new accounts since you are an administrator on this system by clicking on this person icon in the upper right-hand corner and then clicking on User Manager. And then you can see right now pio@ilsa.org is the only administrator. And so I can click on New User and add a new user. And I've now given Stephanie a login as well. And so I simply share with her the login and password and URL, and she can now access it just like I can. But anyway, when you first log in to the system, you'll get to the ILSA homepage, and there are no teams entered. The first thing you need to do is enter the team numbers of the teams in your system. And you can click here, and it will take you to the team manager page, which you can also access up at the top here under team manager. And then you click on insert new. And when you type your first team number, as you can see, it is fully integrated. So the school name is right here, and all of the team members, in this case, 2 team members, are already in the system. And so what you'll need to do, and it takes, if you have your team numbers there with you, it takes about 30 seconds. Oops, Pile University, and it has no team members. Oh, I know what I did wrong. Right. Anyway, so we add, in this one, I'm just going to do this quickly for you. We have 8 teams in this fictional region. Now, one of the other things that's neat about this is when your first team comes to registration, or when your 8 teams show up for registration or orientation or whatever you have, you can use this to check the spelling in the system. So let's say Team 100 shows up and says, "Hi, Madam National Administrator, we're here." You can click on this and click on Edit. And you can say, "Are these the names of the 2 members of your team?" And they say, no, Alyssa has a T at the end of her name. So you just put a T there, click Save Changes, and this is now fixed throughout the entire system. So far, so good. So we now have 8 teams in the system. The other neat thing is if you are having ILSA grade your memorials for you, then when you set this up, if you go to Jessup Competition Memorials Entry, all of the memorial scores are now entered, and they're ranked from high, medium, low. And so as of this moment, you could click on, under Memorials Entry, you could click on Final Result, and you now know your best memorials winner. Now, the only thing you need to do back on the memorials entry page is Chris Bonet from our office will send you the penalties for the teams in your region. You'll need to go through here and fix the penalties. Now, we will have this automated starting next year. And so you won't have to enter the penalties. The teams will have an opportunity to appeal to Chris and so on and so forth. But for now, you'll need to just look at that. Most teams have 0 penalties. So you go through and say, okay, 893A had 2 points in penalties. And so this gets fully integrated into the final memorial rankings and also into the rest of the scoring system. So the moment you enter your teams, the memorial scores are uploaded. Now, if you are a country that is grading your own memorials this year, then you can do that manually as well. So in that case, you just go to Memorials Entry, you click on the team number on the side. So this is 100A. And you'll see we have 5 judges listed here. And if you're judging your own, if you're grading your own memorials, then you'll have no scores here, and you simply pick a judge and you say, you enter his scores. He gave 20s, and then you press save, and that will be plugged in. So it's also a very simple matter to enter your own scores for those few of you that are grading your own memorials. Now, of course, the next step is the pairings. So if we click on Orals Entry under the Jessup competition, we have, once again, a blank screen. Nothing has been entered yet because this is fresh. This is the first time you're logging in. So the first thing you're going to do is create your rooms. So you will want to click on Room Manager, and in this region, we don't have special names for the rooms. You may, or it may be room 106, or it may be the Lincoln room, or whatever, but enter on a line by itself each of the rooms, and then enter the number of preliminary rounds that you have in your competition. You then click Save Changes, and as you can see, in all 4 of your rounds now, you have 5 nice empty rooms. And you can change rounds with this drop-down. Now, there are 2 ways to enter your scores, or to enter your pairings. For smaller regions, you might just want to type them in. And that's fine. And then you click Save Pairings, and it saves them. But for larger regionals, that's a bit of a pain. And so what you can do in that case is click on this button here, Pairings Import, and it will give you a comma-separated value template that you can simply enter it on an Excel spreadsheet or in your notepad or Word or whatever you like. I've already done this, so I'm going to upload my pairings template. And as you can see, all of my pairings are instantly uploaded. And so I now have a new button over here called View Score. That's my score sheet. And so for this year, 2024, you're still going to have to enter oral round score sheets manually. You're still going to need the paper ballots for the judges. Starting in 2025, we will give you the option of having the judges enter their scores themselves from a mobile phone or web-enabled smart device, or their laptop for that matter. But for now, if you click on that, you'll see that we have 100 versus 101, 3 judges down the left, 4 oralists. And again, these are their actual oralists of these 2 teams, and you're able to enter the scores. But we're not going to do that just yet because the competition hasn't started yet. So we now have our pairings entered, all of our teams entered, and our memorial scores. It's time to go over to the judges software. And to do that, we go over to the person icon and scroll down to Judge Administrator. Now, the first time you log into the Judge Administrator, you're going to see there are no judges found. That's because we're assuming you will want to make sure that all of your judges are registered at ilsa.org first. So the first time you log in, knowing that all your judges are in the system, you click Sync Judge Data. And it'll take a couple seconds, but once it's done, it will have a list of every person judging in the Jessup competition this year. Now, you don't need all these people, obviously. Not all of these people are judging in your region. So what you'll need to do is activate the ones that are judging in your region. So let's say Chris Bonet is judging in your region. Under the search box, you type Bonet, and here he is. He's in the system. And what we have here is the judge's name and his conflicts. These are not teams he's viewed before or anything like that. These are teams that he has informed us that he has a personal conflict with and can't judge. Maybe he's a professor at one of the schools. Maybe his niece is mooting on one of the teams, or what have you. But, and that goes under conflicts parsed. Conflicts discursive is for the international rounds where the judges tell us, I cannot judge this team, blah, blah, blah. That will usually be blank with what you're working with. But anyway, to activate Chris for my competition, I will simply check the boxes that he's told me he's available for. We have 4 preliminary rounds, and in this region, we have semifinals and finals. Your competition may have quarterfinals, they may have octafinals. Those are all things that we can customize for your region. We then click save, and we then go back, and we enter our second judge. Our second judge might be Michael Pyle. And Michael, no conflicts, but he's available for everything except round 1. So I enter him as well. And I've got a third judge, Stephanie Corzantes. So I type Corzantes at the top. There's Stephanie. She's available everything except round 2, she told me. And that's her personal availability. And so she's now in. I'm not going to enter all of my judges here. That's just an example of how this works. But once you have them all entered, you can go to Judge Assignment up here at the top. And what you have now is drawing from the pairings that you uploaded in the scoring administrator and judging and drawing from the availability of the judges that you gave. We now have a live jigsaw puzzle that you can start assigning judges. And so I can move Chris over here, and you'll see when I pick up Chris, all 4 of the rooms turn green. That means Chris is able to judge any of them. He has no conflicts. And I pick up Stephanie, and Stephanie is available in all 4 rooms. So I put her in here. This is round 1. If I go to round 2, you'll see Michael Pyle, because he wasn't available in round 1. I did not check his box. And we also see Chris again. So Michael is not available for these 2 rounds. That's because he has a conflict with a couple of these teams, and that was on his conflicts page. Christopher Bonnet has a conflict with a team here and a team here, and that's because in the previous round he judged 102 versus 107. So you can see we have a red border around room 1 and room 2, but he is available for room 4 and room 5. And you continue doing this. The other important thing is we've got something here called backups. And backups is neat because, as you'll see in a minute, this allows you to keep track of your backup judges when they're in the room, when they're not, and so on and so forth. And it also will display on the judges' personal portals on ilsa.org. So when they log into ilsa.org, they will see when they are expected to show up to judge or to be a backup. Now, it will not tell them what teams they're judging or anything else. It will simply tell them that they are expected to show up. Now, obviously, I'm not going to do this for 4 rounds and spend all of your time watching me do this. If you'll give me 1 moment, I've got a macro set up that does all this for me for the purpose of training. So if I come back to judge assignment, all of my judges are assigned. I have finished doing this, and you guys do this every year as well. It's easier now because you've got those red boxes and green boxes that tell you, no, this person is not eligible to judge this round, so on and so forth. So we now have our teams all set up, our pairings all set up, our memorials in, and our judges loaded. In round 1, if I click on View Schedule On, round 1 now appears on each of these judges' pages. And so Ingo Vamser, if he logs into his ilsa.org judges page, he will see that he is expected to be at my regional for round 1. Now, next year, we'll add times and dates and whatnot so that it will be easier. But for now, what he knows is that he's judging this regional competition round 1. And he'll see exactly the same thing as any other judge on here, including my backups, but not including people that are merely marked as available. Available means they're available during that round, but I did not tell them to be there. And so when I finish round 1, I can do that. When I finish round 2, I can view schedule. And what that does is activates this on the judge's page so that they can see their schedule. I tend to leave this off while I'm still working because the judges don't need to see when I'm moving people around all over the place. They don't need to get confused about whether or not they're judging. Okay, so the competition begins. About a half an hour before round one begins, you want to click on this button, Start Round. And it'll ask me, are you sure you want to start the round? And I click OK. This does two things. It activates judge check-in and it activates bailiff check-in. So judge check-in, let's start with that. We've got a couple of ways. So this screen is what your judge administrator is going to be looking at. The person who's responsible for swapping people in and out. If Ingo doesn't show up on time, this is the place where I can move somebody into his spot and from my backups, or I can, if I find out that a judge has a conflict, I can swap them between rounds. Everything is fully click and draggable. But we have two other features here that allow judge check-in. The first is this button up here that says live mode. Live mode is, for those of you that are coming to the international rounds, we put this on a separate laptop and project it onto a wall so that judges can see what room they're judging in, and just as importantly, who they're judging with. So they can go introduce themselves. Hi, I'm Ingo. Well, I'm Brianna. Where's Tiffany? Da, da, da. And they can talk a little bit about the round in the judges' lounge ahead of the match. This also allows us, let's say that there's somebody sitting there with this laptop and they look up and they say, oh, hey, there's Ingo. We click on Ingo's name from this live mode page. It turns him yellow. Oh, and Shane's here, and Chindan's here, and Ted is here. Oh, and one of our backups, Linda's here. Now, your person who is worrying about the jigsaw puzzle, meanwhile, this turns yellow on his page as well, simultaneously. And so the judge administrator now knows that those people are in the room, and he doesn't have to worry about finding them. So that's great. Now, another thing we do, and you might want to do, that's live mode. And like I say, we project that onto a wall. Another thing you might want to do if you have enough laptops in the judge's room is if you click on this person thing, you'll see a link called check-in. What we tend to do is have this on a laptop near the entrance to the judge's lounge with a sign above it that says, if you're here, check yourself in. So Brianna walks in and she says, oh, I'm here. And then Tiffany says, Tiffany, oh, I'm here. And she clicks there. That also updates it on those other two pages so that your judge administrator now knows that all three judges for room one are here. We've also got a button up here, or a box up here called passcode. And if I put a passcode into that, 4 digits, that is now my bailiff's passcode, because we want the bailiffs to be able to input certain information into this system, but we do not want our volunteer bailiffs to have access to the full scoring system. So the bailiffs, what you need to give the bailiffs is this passcode. And you can do a bit different passcode for every round so that you don't have bailiffs messing with the next round or messing with the previous round or whatever. But you also give them a URL for the bailiff login. And so the bailiffs take their smartphones or whatever device they have, and they plug in this URL, scoring.ilsa.org/bailiff/login. And then at that page, they type their passcode, which is the passcode you gave them. And every bailiff has the same passcode because for this purpose, they're interchangeable. You could even have, if you're a smaller competition, one person doing this. But once they log in, they see all 4 rounds that are going on right now. And so let's say I'm the bailiff for room 2. I go to room 2 and I go up to the applicant team and say, hey, applicant team, who's your first oralist? And they say, oh, it's James Kirk. Who's your second oralist? Oh, it's Montgomery Scott. And then you walk over to the respondent side. Who is your first oralist? Alex Rozhenko. Who's your second? Sulu. Okay, great. And then they click save, and those are now entered. And so the bailiff can now click on, this is the bailiff for room 3, remember, can now click on room 3 and it turns red. Now back in the judge's room 3 has turned red. So the national administrator and the judge administrator and everybody now knows that the bailiff has sent back a signal saying, these 2 teams are ready, the room is clean, I am ready to take the judges to the courtroom. And so over time, all of these will turn yellow, or else we'll move in backups or whatever, and each of these rooms will turn red. Then, as usual, just like in a normal round, you send the judges out, and let's say room 3 has been sent out. Your judge administrator can click on it and it turns purple. So we now know that we have nothing to worry about in room 3 anymore. It is out, it has started. So the judges go off, they judge the round, everything is great, and the bailiff comes back for one more year, I'm sorry, with 3 paper ballots, which are the score sheets from that judge. So we get that for room 3, we get it for room 1, room 2, room 4. We now have a complete set of ballots. I am now ready to click stop round in round 1, which turns off the bailiff and judge check-in, and go to round 2, where I can enter a new password for my bailiffs, and where I can click start round. Am I sure I want to start the round? Yes. And now I can start checking in the judges again. Now you'll see that the judges who are still here are yellow because they came back from the last round. If you're in a situation where there's some time between round 1 and round 2, or round 1 was late night on Thursday and round 2 is early morning on Friday, you want to go through and unyellow these people manually so that the next morning when they do show up, you've got an accurate blank slate. But anyway, you now have in your hot little hands the score sheets from the round. This is where we're back with the scoring administrator. And you can now go back to that page I told you about before, Oral's entry. And in round 1, if we click on view score, you saw before that this is an oral score sheet. You can now check to make sure that the judges' names are correct and that the 4 oralists' names are correct. And then you can manually enter the scores from the judge's score sheet. Ingo gave a 99, 98, 97, 96. It will not be automatically filled in your system. It'll say 0000, 0000, 0000. If you only have a 2-judge panel, then only 2 judges will show up here, and the 3rd judge will be automatically calculated according to the Jessup rules as the mean of the other 2 judges' scores. Then you click Save Changes. You do the same for the other 4 rooms, and then you can go to round 2, do the same there, round 3, the same there, round 4, the same there. We have now finished our preliminary rounds. 4 rounds in the can, and I can now, in addition to seeing the memorials rankings, I can now see the oralist rankings sorted by average score. Now, if you are a small region where the teams are only competing twice, then you'll want to use preliminary rounds, which lists every oralist who competed, and this tells you who won best oralist. If you are in a larger competition, the Jessup rules say that you must moot in 2 or more matches to be eligible for prizes. So you'll want to go to this drop-down menu and click on preliminary rounds 2 or more, and then click on average score. And this tells you who won prizes. And then finally, you can go to this page, Team Manager and Ranking, and it will rank the teams for you automatically based upon wins in the first instance, raw points in the second instance, and round points in the third instance. And those are your final rankings. And for each of these teams, you can now click on their score sheet, and you can see how they did in each of their 4 matches. And just as importantly, because you're about to have semifinals or quarterfinals or whatever, you can click print here and print a copy of this so you can show the team when they make their decision about which side they're going to argue in the semifinals. So we're now ready for our semifinals. I go down to semifinals. Well, it does not know who's in the semifinals yet. It knows the rankings, but you haven't told it to generate the semifinals. So I click on Generate Pairings, and this page will automatically pair the teams according to the Jessup rules. So the number 1 team plays the number 4 team, the number 2 team plays the number 3 team, and that's from our rankings that we just had. Now, depending on how you do things in your region, you're either doing a coin toss, or for most of us in the semifinals, the higher seed gets to choose which side they're arguing. The higher seed here is Team 101, and so we asked them, Team 101, here's your score sheet. Which side do you want to argue? They say, oh, we want to argue applicant. Good. Now I go to team 107 and 102, and I say, team 107, which side do you want to argue? They say, oh, we'd like to argue respondent. So I just click on these arrow buttons, and team 107 is now the respondent against their opponent, team 102. I click Save Pairings, and you'll see I now have a score sheet. And if I click on that score sheet, this is not the same score sheet as we saw in the preliminary rounds. And I want to emphasize this. In the advanced rounds of the Jessup competition, the judges do not give a score. They simply vote. And right now this is blank because I haven't given any judges to this round, but we'll come back to that in a moment. Because over on the judges administrator side, so I click on here and go back to the judges administrator, and in your system, this is probably two different people, so they're not clicking back and forth and back and forth. The judges administrator can now go to judge assignment, and his semifinals before were blank. But now everybody that he said was a backup in the semifinal is here, and he's now got the pairings appropriate for the pleading options that you just did, and he can assign judges to those pairings. And remember, if you saw, Kripa cannot judge room 1 because she apparently saw one or both of those teams in the prelims. And so there's a little bit of, sort of jigsaw puzzling here. But as you can see, it's very, very fast. And then this runs just the same. You press start round, the bailiffs go off to the rooms, and so on and so forth. And then over in your scoring administrator, they can now go to semifinals. And when the round is over, as you can see, it's got the judge's name, and Agnesi voted for the applicant, Michelle voted for the respondent, Ramona voted for the applicant, and we just enter that, and it calculates who won. It tells you 101A won the match. So you click Save Changes, and then the results come back from your second match. Kripa voted for respondent, Arun voted for respondent, Pranjal voted for respondent. 107R wins. So we click OK. Save Changes. Now, you won't be surprised to learn that now that we know the two teams that won the semifinals, we can go to the finals page, and it has automatically generated this as well. Now, at the international rounds, in the championship round, it's a coin toss. So 101A, you are the higher seed, call the toss, they call the toss, they win. 101A, which side would you like to argue? They say, we want to argue respondent, so I click on these arrows, I click Save Pairings, and now you, having followed along this far, you will not be shocked to learn that over in the Judges Administrator software, it has now filled in my final round. So I can now drop 3 judges into the final round and do the same thing. Life is good. All right. Now, one other cool thing this software does, those of you who run large regionals know, you've just been going 4 days, you've had preliminary rounds, you've had complaints, you've had semifinals, finals, so on and so forth. You've announced awards. There's one more thing to do, and that's the team packets. Every team wants their results, wants their score sheets for memorials, their score sheets for orals. That is a pain. Especially when you're exhausted from running the competition all weekend. So we've added something. If you click on Jessup Competition and go down to this red button that says Finish Competition, you're going to pop-up window that says this action will end the competition and cannot be undone. Are you sure you wish to proceed? You click OK, and then it'll take a couple minutes, a couple seconds. It'll take longer if you have a large competition. At the international rounds, it takes about 45 seconds, and that's 135 teams. And then once it's done, I get a pop-up box. And what I have here is a window that has a PDF for the final memorial rankings, the final oral rankings, the final team rankings, and then 8 different pages for the 8 teams' individual master score sheets. That sheet that showed how they did in every match. 8 different PDFs that contain batches of every team's memorial scores. And 8 different batches of every team's oral score sheets. And these are the individual score sheets filled out by the judges, or entered by you based upon getting filled out by the judges. Also very cool, now that I've pressed finish competition, these are automatically published to the team's portals on their individual portals on ilsa.org. So when Team 102 logs into their page, they will see the final memorial result, final oral result, final rankings, their master score sheet, their memorial score sheets, and their oral score sheets that they can download and be happy with. Now, if you're the kind of administrator who wants to give them hard copies, you can also just print these PDF packages, and they'll come out already collated and everything else. So that is the scoring software. As you can see, a lot of the things that we used to do by hand as recently as last year are now automated for us. And it should make things like judge conflicts and setting the pairings for the advanced rounds and setting up the preliminary rounds a lot more automated and a lot easier, especially for those of you in medium size or large regional or national competitions. So with that, I'd like to open it up for any questions you might have, any comments. You can either raise your hand using the reactions button, or you can put your questions in the chat window. We'll start with Leah. Hi, Leah. You are muted.
This is very cool.
Isn't
just
it? Isn't it? I'm
it,
really
it is very
enthused.
cool. The only question I have is if we don't want to bother with the bailiffs starting rounds, stopping rounds, is there any problem with just not using that feature?
No, not at all. You could, because obviously the judges are going to need the oralists' names on their score sheets anyway.
Yeah, yeah,
And so you saw those were drop-down boxes.
yeah.
Yep, you can just use the drop-down boxes.
Okay, great. That's
Yep.
the only one that doesn't really make sense for us, just because I don't trust bailiffs very much. Thank you.
Yep. Yep. No. And every competition is different. And we actually considered not having the bailiff feature in at all for exactly that reason. But in talking to different national administrators, it turns out there are enough people that do trust their bailiffs. God help them.
Great, thanks.
That it makes sense. Especially for those of us in a larger hotel or a larger facility where you don't want to be on a walkie-talkie saying, bailiff, is the room ready? Okay, other questions? Oh, and Leah, one Canada-specific note as well. This is obviously not set up for multiple final rounds or 3 final rounds or 16 final rounds or whatever you guys are doing in Canada nowadays.
We only have the one or two. We have two.
Two.
Two
Yeah,
finals.
it's not set up. It's not set up for 2.
Yeah.
So you
Okay.
guys, what you would have to do is go basically right up to the final round and then go manual in the last round, which you do anyway. I mean, they're all VIP judges in Canada at that stage. And so you just get their vote and make the announcement.
And the
It's
fact that we have 3, everybody moves 3 times is not a problem.
right.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Right. I'm making it, having just said confidently that yes, that is not a problem. I am going to check that. And I will let you know directly, Liam. Any other questions? You can either enter them in the chat window or give a hand raise or anything else. I'm now going to talk very slowly before we end the meeting, just to make sure that nobody is waiting for the last moment to ask their question. But as far as next steps go, our last training is on Wednesday. And after that, I'm going to be contacting all of you to set you up with a demonstration page that is fully live and you can do whatever you like with it, but it won't be your real page yet because we don't have real memorial scores. We don't have, because the teams haven't turned their memorials in, but you and your administration team can play with it, make sure you're comfortable with it and ready to go. And then in late January, once the memorial scores are in, we will start getting you your real live system so that you can sync it up and be ready to roll. Those of you who have regionals very close to the memorials deadline, Don't worry, we're going to get them out to you in the order that your national rounds occur. In the meantime, please get your all-round judges to get their names in, and memorials round judges for that matter as well, to get their names in and register on ilsa.org so that they are in the system and synced up when you press sync judges. And also, I will be emailing you within the week for a list of your judges. More on that in a moment. So that we can invite them to the Coffee and Compromise event so that they can exchange ideas with other judges from around the world about what makes a good question, about how to judge the Jessup, and so on and so forth. Somebody asked at the last meeting, what if I don't know exactly what judges I'm going to be using? I've got a pool of, say, 12 judges, and I'm only going to use 7. Are they allowed to attend the Coffee and Compromise event? Absolutely. As long as they're not affiliated with a team, they're not a coach, they're not a somebody who's going to share secret information. Basically, anybody who's eligible to receive the bench memo, you should feel free to put on your list. In fact, one of the people at the last meeting was going to use the Coffee and Compromise events to try to recruit judges. Look how cool these meetings are. Look how cool it is to judge the Jessup. Please sign up. I'm fine with that. That's all I have. And so unless there are any other questions, seeing none, thank you all very much. Have a great evening. Have a great afternoon. Have a great morning, a handful of you. And thank you for your service. We could not, quite literally could not do this without you. It is wonderful to see all of your names. If you want to, as you're logging out, if you want to turn on your camera for a moment so I can wave at you, it's great to have faces to match with the names, and great to see a lot of familiar names here that I haven't seen in a year, or in some cases since before COVID. So thank you all very much. Let's have a great year.